Daniel Torres had been alone on the planet for 3 months. His ship crashed in a bad storm, and now he was stuck in a place that did not want him. The people here were called. They had technology far beyond anything Daniel had ever seen. Their cities were made of crystal that glowed in the dark. Their machines could do things that seemed like magic. But none of them helped him. Daniel sent out distress signals every day. He used the broken radio from his ship. He even climbed to high mountains and made fires in the pattern that human rescue teams would recognize. Nothing worked. They saw his signals. They heard his calls. They just did not care. To them, Daniel was nothing. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. Humans did not matter in their advanced world. So Daniel learned to survive alone. He found water in the deep valleys where the rocks held moisture. He hunted the small creatures that lived in the crystal forests. He built a shelter from stone and metal pieces he found scattered around the crashed ship. Every day was hard. Every night was cold, but Daniel was strong. Humans came from a harsh world called Earth. That harsh world had made them tough, made them able to live in places where others would die. One day, Daniel climbed a high ridge to search for food. From this place, he could see the great palace of the queen. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The palace had towers that went up so high they seemed to touch the sky. The walls were made of clear crystal that showed light from deep inside. Guards moved around the palace in armor that looked like liquid metal. Daniel watched the palace with his binoculars. He did not plan to go there. They made it clear they did not want human contact. Going to the palace would be stupid. It would get him killed. Then he saw the girl. Soldiers dragged her through the front gates. She was young, maybe 19 or 20 years old. Her skin was the pale blue color of all, but her hair was different. It was silver like starlight. She wore a long white dress that seemed made of cloth and light mixed together. The soldiers were not gentle with her. They pulled her arm hard. They pushed her forward when she slowed down. Daniel watched through the binoculars. The girl did not fight. She did not scream. She just walked where they took her face empty of emotion. The soldiers took her to a structure that looked different from the rest of the palace. It was old, made of dark stone. Strange symbols covered the walls. The entrance looked like an open mouth. That night, Daniel saw lights from the palace. He heard sounds that made his skin feel cold. They sounded like chanting. They sounded like a ceremony. He did not know what it meant, but his human instinct told him something bad was happening. He could not sleep. The next morning, Daniel made a choice that would change everything. He did not think about the danger. He did not think about what would happen to him. He just knew that the girl needed help. Something inside him, something that made humans different from machines and technology, told him this was wrong. Daniel climbed down from his ridge. He moved toward the palace. When he got close, he stayed in the shadows of the crystal towers. The palace was bigger than he thought. The walls went up forever. Guards stood at every entrance, but they were not watching the ground. They watched the sky. They watched for ships and aircraft. They did not watch for one small human walking on the ground. Daniel found an opening in the wall. The crystal had cracked long ago. It was just big enough for a human to squeeze through. Inside, Daniel moved through long halls. His boots made sounds on the smooth floor. Every shadow could hide a guard. Every corner could have a weapon pointed at his face. But luck was with him. He found the dark building from the inside. There were stairs going down. The air got colder as he went lower. At the bottom, he found a large chamber. The walls were covered with old symbols. In the center of the room, the girl stood before a massive stone door. It looked like the mouth of something alive. 5 guards stood around her. They wore armor and carried weapons that glowed with blue light. When Daniel stepped into the chamber, 3 of them turned to look at him. For a moment, nothing happened. The guards did not understand what they were seeing. A human, wet and dirty from weeks of survival in the wilderness, stood in their sacred chamber. It made no sense. Humans did not exist on. Humans did not move like this. Humans did not belong here. Daniel did not waste the moment they had. He moved faster than the guards expected. His body was built for Earth gravity. On with its lighter pull, his muscles were strong, too fast. The first guard did not even get his weapon up before Daniel hit him. The blow was controlled. Daniel did not want to kill anyone. He just wanted to stop them. The guard went down. The second guard fired his weapon. The blue light missed Daniel by a few feet. The heat from the beam made the air shimmer. Daniel threw a piece of broken stone. It hit the guard in the face. The guard fell back, surprised and hurt. The girl screamed, not in fear but in rage. She threw her body at the third guard. She did not fight like a soldier. She fought like a wild animal, desperate and without planning. The guard hit her, but she did not stop. She just kept fighting. Daniel reached her in 3 long steps. He grabbed her hand. The girl looked up at him. Her eyes were bright with fear and hope mixed together. Daniel pulled her toward the stairs. The other 2 guards were still alive. One was trying to get his weapon to work. The other was calling into a communication device. Alarms would sound soon. Soldiers would come. Daniel and the girl had maybe 2 minutes before the entire palace guard hunted them down. They ran. Behind them, the guards tried to follow, but Daniel blocked the stairs. He pushed a heavy stone support and the ceiling cracked. Dust filled the air. The guards coughed and stopped chasing. Daniel pulled the girl out of the palace. They ran into the crystal forests. They ran past the place where Daniel had made his camp. They ran into the deep desert where the guards would not follow. Because in the mind it was impossible that the human could survive out there. The human would die in the desert. The girl would die with him, and they would both be forgotten. The girl, whose name would be lost to the desert, and the failed sacrifice would be forgotten. They did not understand humans yet. They did not know that humans had survived on Earth in deserts hotter and colder than this one. They did not know that humans could find water where none seemed to exist. They did not know that humans could adapt and survive and live when everything told them they should die. As the night came and the 2 of them sat under the alien stars, Daniel looked at the girl. She was shaking from fear and cold. She had never been outside the palace walls before. She had never slept on hard ground or drunk from a stone cup. But she was alive, and that was what mattered. 3 weeks later, Daniel found an old communication station left by traders from another world. Daniel fixed the broken equipment with his hands and his mind. He sent a signal out into space. He told the Human Federation that Daniel Torres was alive on and needed extraction. 2 days later, a rescue shuttle came down from the sky. As climbed into the shuttle, she looked back at Daniel. He stood in the desert, covered in dust, his clothes torn and his body tired. But his eyes were strong. His eyes said he was glad she was safe. Did not understand why he had done this. She was royalty, he was nothing. He should have let her die. It was her duty. It was her law, but humans did not follow their laws. Humans followed something else, something that they had forgotten long ago. The shuttle door closed. Daniel Torres sat in the holding cell for 4 days before anyone spoke to him. The cell was clear crystal. He could see through the walls to the space station beyond. Stars burned in the black nothing outside. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home, but Daniel was not going home. A woman entered the cell. She was not human. She had blue skin and eyes like pieces of the night sky. Her name was given to him as Advocate. She was of a species known for being cold and logical. She carried a data device that showed information Daniel could not read. "You have made a serious mistake," said. She did not sit down. "The Queen has filed formal charges against you: kidnapping of royal property, disruption of sacred ceremony, theft of the heir to the throne. The penalties are severe." "I saved her life," Daniel said. "You violated their law," replied. "Your personal morality does not matter here. What matters is the galactic collective code. Humans are still considered a developing species. You do not have the right to interfere in the customs of more advanced civilizations." Daniel stood up from his bench. "Their custom is murder. They kill their own people. That is not tradition. That is evil." Looked at him without expression. Evil is a human word. They have maintained their civilization for 50,000 years. They have rules, rules that humans must follow. You broke those rules. Now you must face judgment. The trial began in a large chamber on the station. The room was made of white metal that seemed to glow from inside. At one end, seated on a raised platform, were 12 judges from 12 different species. They had come from across the galaxy to decide if a human had the right to save a princess. The Queen was there too. She sat in a chair made of black crystal. Her name was, and her presence filled the room like a storm. Her skin glowed with soft light. Her eyes were the color of deep space. When she looked at Daniel, he felt the weight of 50,000 years of power and authority. "You took my daughter," said. Her voice was calm but sharp like a blade. "You took her from the place where she had accepted her fate. You made her run like an animal through the desert. You brought her to a human rescue station, breaking every law of respect and hierarchy that exists between our worlds." A judge from a species with 4 arms leaned forward. Is it true that you removed the princess from the ceremony? Yes, Daniel said, I did that. And you knew it violated law. I did not care, Daniel said, because their law was killing an innocent person. The judges made sounds that might have been surprise. Some of them turned to speak with the judges next to them. The queen sat very still. Who stood beside Daniel made a gesture that meant Daniel had just made things worse. The people have practiced the sacred sacrifice for 50,000 years, said a judge who looked like a creature made of blue ice. This ritual has kept their civilization stable. It has prevented catastrophe. Your action has disrupted this balance. What catastrophe? Daniel asked. The void beast, the queen said. You do not understand what you have done. Deep beneath sleeps a creature of great power. Only the sacrifice can keep it dormant. Without the ritual, it will wake. Worlds will burn. Presented data to the judges, charts and numbers that showed historical information about the void beast. She spoke in the logical way of her species. There is no concrete evidence that the sacrifice maintains the creature's dormancy. The beast has been dormant for over 3,000 years. The sacrifices have been made every 100 years. The statistical probability that a single missed sacrifice would suddenly wake the creature is extremely low. Statistics are not law, the queen said. We have 5,000 years of unbroken tradition. Your human numbers do not matter against that history. One of the judges turned to Daniel. The charge is clear. You have violated sacred law. The question before us is what punishment is appropriate. Some have suggested execution. Others suggest imprisonment. I suggest return, the queen said. Return Daniel Tors to in chains. Let him complete the sacrifice that was prevented. And let us take another human to replace the lost ritual. That will restore the balance. Daniel's heart went cold. He understood what she was saying. He would die. And another human, maybe hundreds of humans, would die to satisfy their tradition. This is insane, Daniel said. You are talking about murder. We are talking about survival, the queen replied. My daughter survived because of you, but may not survive your interference. That is a price I do not accept. The judges discussed among themselves. They used languages that did not translate. They showed each other data on their devices. Some seemed to agree with the queen, others looked less certain. But Daniel could see which way the decision was moving. The collective did not care about one human. The collective did not care about philosophy or morality. The collective cared about maintaining order. And right now, order meant supporting the queen. Then walked into the chamber. No one had expected her to be there. The queen's face went white. The judges looked at each other in confusion, walked to the center of the chamber in her white dress. She looked small against the vastness of the room and the presence of all these powerful beings. My name is, she said. Her voice was not strong, but it was steady. I am the princess you want to kill. I am the daughter of the queen, and I want to speak. The queen stood up. You do not understand the situation. I understand completely, said. She turned to look at Daniel, then back to the queen. Daniel Tors saved my life. He did this knowing it was against your law. He did this knowing he might be punished. He did this because he believed my life was worth saving. One of the judges leaned forward. Princess, the ritual is necessary for your world's survival. No, said. It is not. I studied the ancient records. I spent weeks in our library while the council prepared for the ceremony. The truth is hidden in the text, but it is there. The void beast was wounded in the great war that happened 3,000 years ago. It retreated underground to heal. The first ritual sacrifice happened at the exact moment the creature fell asleep naturally. Our ancestors saw this and believed the sacrifice had caused the sleep, but it was just coincidence. The queen made a sound like pain. You speak of things you do not understand, daughter. Those rituals have held our world together. They have held people in fear, said. Every 100 years, a young person is selected to die. Every 100 years, families are broken. Every 100 years, someone like me is told that their life is not worth living, and it is all based on a mistake, a misunderstanding that became law. If you stop the sacrifices, the beast will wake, the queen said, and you will be responsible for the death of billions. No, said. If the beast wakes, it will be because someone in your government created false fear to maintain control. That is the real evil. That is what Daniel understood when I did not. The judges were very quiet now. The chamber felt frozen. The queen stared at her daughter as if looking at in the 3 nights before the trial Daniel and had prepared something secret. The advocate had given Daniel access to a data interface. It was small, like a black stone that fit in the palm of his hand, showed him how to use it, how to touch the surface and make words appear in the air. At first, Daniel thought it was impossible. He was not trained on this technology. He was a human pilot with basic education, but explained it in simple terms. The interface read his thoughts through his fingers. It translated his intention into data request. Find records, Daniel thought. Medical records, sacrifice records, everything about the void beast. The interface showed him files. Thousands of files. Millions of files, all stored in the archives, all available to someone who knew how to ask for them, had arranged for Daniel to have limited access. Just enough to look, just enough to find the truth. Daniel did not sleep those 3 nights. He read. He studied. He looked at charts and maps and written histories that went back thousands of years, and what he found made him angry. The records showed that the original void beast was real. It existed, but it was not what they believed. The creature was wounded in an ancient war. The records were clear about this. A military conflict had happened exactly 5,000 years ago. The beast had been struck by weapons. It had bled darkness and void energy. It had retreated into the planet's core to heal. Then the records showed something else, something that was hidden in the middle of other information. A private note written by a scientist named Archon. The note said, "The beast sleeps now after 50 years of silence. I cannot know if it will wake again. The council proposes a ritual to ensure it stays dormant. I have tried to tell them that rest is natural for such creatures, but they fear. They always fear, so we will give them a ritual. We will tell them that sacrifice keeps the monster asleep. But I know the truth. The beast will sleep for 1,000 years at minimum. By then we will all be dust." The scientist was right. The sacrifices had been made for 5,000 years, every 100 years without fail, and the beast had remained dormant. But the records also showed something that the leadership did not understand, or if they understood, they had hidden it. Every single time they made a sacrifice, the planet shook slightly. Every ritual woke the beast a little bit. The creature's rest was disturbed. It stirred. The ground trembled. And they interpreted this as proof that the sacrifice was working, that the ritual was necessary, that without it the beast would destroy everything. But the truth was the opposite. The sacrifices were agitating the creature. The rituals were making it restless. Every time they killed someone in that dark chamber, they were pouring energy into the magical connection between their people and the beast. They were feeding it. They were calling to it. They were slowly, over thousands of years, training the creature to expect regular disturbances. Daniel found a more recent file, a warning sent by a scientist to the Queen. It was dated 40 years ago. The scientist said, "If the sacrifices continue, the beast will eventually develop an expectation. It will create a hunger for these events. Within 2 to 3 centuries, the creature may wake from deprivation if we miss a single ritual. We must stop the sacrifices now while we still can." The Queen's response was preserved in the file. She had simply deleted the scientist's title. She had removed him from his position. She had not answered the warning. Daniel saved all this information in the black stone interface, had shown him how to do it, how to make copies that could not be, how to prepare the evidence for the trial. But there was something else, something that Daniel found in the deepest files, something that explained why the Queen had been so committed to continuing the sacrifices even when her own scientists warned against it. The royal family did not randomly select who would be sacrificed. The lottery that everyone believed in was false. The Queen and her advisors chose the sacrifice. They chose who would die, and they used this power to eliminate political enemies, to kill people who asked too many questions, to remove anyone who might challenge their authority. In 40 years, the Queen had sacrificed 30 people. At least 5 of them had been scientists or philosophers who disagreed with the council. At least 3 had been minor nobles from other families. Only 7 had been true innocents selected by pure chance. Would have been the 31st victim if Daniel had not saved her. Daniel held this knowledge in his mind as the trial began. When the judges asked him questions, he answered carefully. He did not reveal everything yet, had instructed him to wait for the right moment, to let the Queen believe she was winning, to let her explain why the sacrifices were necessary, and then to present the evidence. As spoke about the ancient records, Daniel watched the Queen's face change. The royal woman's expression went from anger to something like fear. She realized that her daughter understood the truth, that someone had shown the information that had been kept hidden. When the judges began to question more carefully, asking her about her sources, the queen stood up. Enough, said. Her voice was different now. It did not have the sharp blade quality. It had an edge of desperation. You are children playing with knowledge you do not understand. The sacrifices are necessary, not because of the reasons my daughter has discovered, but because they maintain the magical bond between our people and the creature below. Without this bond, without this connection, the beast will be uncontrolled. It will be wild. It will destroy us all. Then tell us about this magical connection, one of the judges said. Explain to us this bond. Explain why, if the sacrifices are so important, your own records show the creature has been dormant for 3,000 years without increasing ritual frequency. The queen did not answer. She sat back down in her black crystal chair. Her shoulders had dropped. The light in her skin had dimmed. Stepped forward. I have evidence, the said. Evidence that shows the historical record, evidence that shows the creature's actual state, and evidence that shows the queen has misled her own people about the nature of the ritual. She placed the data files into the chamber's central display system. Charts appeared, numbers showed. Historical documents became visible to everyone. The judges studied the information without speaking. Some of them looked angry, some looked shocked. All of them looked certain of something. Daniel Torres had not wanted this. He had not wanted to expose the queen's lies. He had not wanted to embarrass her in front of the entire galactic collective. He had just wanted to save a girl's life. But in saving, he had started something larger. He had started the unraveling of a government built on fear and false rituals, and the queen knew it. She looked at him with an expression that was no longer anger. It was something worse. It was the look the judges deliberated for 2 hours. Daniel and waited in a small room connected to the chamber. Through the walls, they could hear the sound of arguments, voices raised in disagreement, data being called for, questions asked over and over again. Finally, the judges reached a decision. One of them, a creature made of crystalline structures and blue light, announced the verdict. The evidence presented by the defense is compelling. The queen's claims about the necessity of the sacrifice appear to be based on misinterpretation of ancient events, not on confirmed science. However, the court also recognizes that this decision impacts the security of an entire civilization. The judge paused. Everyone in the chamber knew what was coming. It was the compromise that nobody wanted but everyone expected. Daniel Torres is found guilty of violating law. However, given the extraordinary circumstances and the evidence of systematic deception by the government, the sentence is reduced from execution to life imprisonment. He will be imprisoned on itself, the queen said, and for the first time she smiled. It was not a smile of happiness. It was a smile of victory. In the dungeons beneath the palace, deep underground in the place where the darkness lives, he will spend his remaining days in the shadows. He will have time to consider his interference in our ways. The judges looked at each other. Some seemed unhappy with this arrangement, but they did not object. It was a sovereign world. They had the right to choose where they imprisoned their criminals, and technically the punishment was not death. Technically it was legal. Then so it is decided, the head judge said. The human will be transferred to serve his sentence. As guards moved toward Daniel to take him away, stood up from where she sat in the observation section. No, she said, I will not accept this. The queen's face went red with anger. Sit down, daughter, this is not your decision to make. It is exactly my decision, said. She walked to the center of the chamber, the same place where the judges sat. I claim my right as a citizen. I claim my right under our law. Article 47 of the Code states that any citizen may voluntarily share the punishment of a person they believe to be wrongly treated. That is my right. The queen stood up. You will do no such thing. I will, said. Her voice was calm. Her decision was final. If Daniel Torres goes to the dungeons, I go with him. If he spends his life in darkness, I spend my life in darkness. I am responsible for his actions because I support them, and I will not let him suffer alone for saving my life. For a long moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The queen stared at her daughter as if looking at a person she had never seen before. The judges looked uncomfortable, looked almost surprised. This is foolishness, the queen said. You will abandon your place as princess. You will abandon your future. You will waste your life in a dungeon for a human who is beneath your station. Then I will waste it with purpose, said. I will waste it protecting someone who protected me, and I will waste it remembering that there is something more important than status. more important than comfort, more important than following rules that are wrong. The queen turned away from her daughter. She sat back down in her chair. When she spoke again, her voice was dead, like something that had already died inside. "Do as you wish," she said. "You are not my daughter anymore." The chamber went very quiet. 3 days later, Daniel, Tors, and stood together on the surface of. They had been transported in a sealed pod from the orbital station. Now they stood in the open air, waiting for the escort that would take them to the palace dungeons. The sky was purple. The wind carried the smell of alien flowers and strange minerals. "I am sorry," Daniel said. "I have destroyed your life." "You saved my life," replied. "Everything else I choose to do is my own decision. They are not your responsibility." That night, as the guards prepared to take them into the deep places beneath the palace, the ground began to shake. At first it was very small, just a trembling, like a large creature moving far underground, but then it grew stronger. The crystal spires of the palace began to sway. Cracks appeared in the walls. The guards looked at each other with fear in their eyes. The queen came to the window of her chamber. She saw the darkness rising from the ground. She saw something massive moving beneath the surface of, and she knew what was happening. The void beast was waking. For 50 years, the last sacrifice had been made on schedule. The ritual had been performed. The queen had stood in the dark chamber and watched as a young person gave their life to the creature below. And every time the earth had shaken briefly, and then the ground had gone quiet again. But this time there was no sacrifice. This time the ritual had been broken. And the creature, which had been trained by 50,000 years of tradition to expect regular feeding, was now angry. It was confused. It was hungry for the energy that it had learned to need. Alarms sounded across. Millions of people began to flee to the orbital stations. The government issued emergency warnings. Scientists scrambled to understand what was happening. The queen called Daniel and to her chamber. She was not the same woman who had sentenced Daniel to the dungeon. She was someone else now, someone broken by the knowledge that her decisions had created this disaster. "The sacrifices were not supposed to keep it asleep," the queen said. Her voice shook. "They were supposed to maintain the bond, the magical connection that kept it under our control. Without the ritual, the connection breaks. The creature becomes wild." "You knew this," said. "You knew that the sacrifices were actually feeding the creature, making it dependent on them, and you continued anyway." "Because the alternative was to admit that everything we had done for 50,000 years was wrong," the queen said. "Because admitting the truth would destroy our civilization from within. I chose to maintain the lie, and now the lie has destroyed us anyway." The ground shook more violently. Through the windows of the palace, they could see the sky turning dark. Something massive was rising from beneath the surface, something that seemed to consume light itself. The void beast was coming, and there was no ritual to stop it anymore. The creature filled the sky above. It was not made of flesh and bone. It was made of void and darkness and pure energy that existed in the spaces between matter. Its size was impossible to measure. Its shape kept changing. One moment it looked like a hand reaching down from the clouds. The next moment it looked like a mouth opening to swallow the world. The void beast was everything that they had feared for 50,000 years, and it was hungry. The defense systems could not stop it. Energy weapons passed through the creature as if it was made of smoke. Missiles disappeared into its dark body and were never heard from again. Military ships tried to fight, but the creature did not fight back. It just moved. It moved through the air and the ground shook. It moved across the sky and storms formed. And everywhere it went, the civilization was destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people died in the first few hours. In the palace, the queen watched the destruction with a face made of stone. She had made this. Through her choice to maintain the ritual, through her choice to continue the lie, she had created this. And now she had to watch as her world burned. "There is only one way to stop it," said. She held a large ancient book in her hands. It was made of material that looked like metal but was soft to the touch. "The ritual records are clear. The creature can be put back to sleep. But it requires a true sacrifice, not a forced taking of life, a willing giving of life." "That is impossible," Daniel said. "No one would volunteer to die, not even to save their world." "Someone would," said. "Someone who understands that sacrifice is not punishment. Sacrifice is a gift freely given. The creature has been bonded to bloodline for so long that it needs that connection. It needs to feel someone choosing to give their life, not being forced to. The queen stood up from her window. "Then I will do it," she said. "I will go to the creature, I will offer myself. It is my fault that this happened. My blood should be the payment." "No," said. "Your death will not work. The creature knows you. It knows your fear. It knows your lie. A sacrifice has to be something it does not expect. Something that breaks all the rules of what sacrifice is supposed to be." She turned to look at Daniel. "You have to do it," said. "You have to offer yourself." Daniel did not respond immediately. He looked through the window at the creature moving across. It was destroying buildings made to last forever. It was turning crystal towers into dust. Millions of people were dying. "I am human," he said. "The spell requires blood." "No," said. She pulled another book from the shelves. This one was even older, its pages covered in handwriting so faded it could barely be read. "The original spell was made with knowledge from many worlds. The binding is to willing sacrifice, not to species. But the connection is strongest through bloodline, through family, through people bonded together." She picked up a crystal knife from the queen's chamber. Without hesitation, she cut her own arm. Her blood was bright silver, glowing with gentle light. She held her arm out toward Daniel. "Mix our blood," said. "Give me yours, I will give you mine. Then you will have bloodline. You will be able to make the sacrifice that our people cannot make because we are too afraid." Daniel took the knife. He cut his own arm, and dark red human blood mixed with the silver blood of the princess. They held their arms together, and their blood became one color, a mixture that was neither human nor but something new. "If I do this," Daniel said, "I will not come back, you understand that?" "Yes," said, "I understand." "Your world will survive," Daniel said. "Your people will continue, they will remember this, they will know what I did for them." "That does not matter," said. "What matters is that you are willing to do it, that you choose this path, that you show the world what humans are capable of." The queen walked closer to them. She touched Daniel's shoulder with her hand. She did not say anything because there was nothing to say. She had tried to have him killed. She had tried to destroy him, and now he was going to save her world. Daniel walked out of the palace alone. The ground beneath his feet was breaking apart. The sky was growing darker as the creature descended lower. He made his way to the sacred chamber where would have been sacrificed. The dark stone building still stood. It still existed, because it was the connection point between the world and the creature. He went into the chamber and stood before the entrance to the void. The massive stone door hung open, and he could see darkness beyond it, a darkness that was not natural, a darkness that seemed to be alive. Daniel held up his arm, and the mixed blood glowed. The human blood and the blood together created a light that the void seemed to recognize. "I am here," Daniel said. "I am here to make a true sacrifice, not because I am forced, not because of tradition, but because I choose this. Because there are people who matter more to me than my own life, because your hunger can end if you accept a gift instead of a taking." The darkness moved. It was not violent, it was almost gentle. It was the way darkness moves when it is tired, when it is old, when it has been hungry for so long that it has forgotten what it is like to be satisfied. The void beast reached out with something that might have been a hand but was made of nothing solid. It took Daniel by the arm, and as it pulled him into the darkness, Daniel thought of. He thought of the queen who was not his queen. He thought of a world that would continue to exist because he had chosen to die. The creature pulled him down into the void, and it went to sleep. The effect was immediate. The shaking stopped. The storms disappeared. The darkness that had been covering broke apart and scattered. Light returned to the sky. The void beast sank back down into the planet's core, satisfied at last, not by the taking of life, but by the giving of it, not by force, but by choice. In the palace felt the change. The trembling stopped. The walls became still. She knew without being told that Daniel Tors had chosen to die, and she knew that his choice had saved everyone. The queen made an announcement to all her people. She told them the truth about the sacrifices. She told them about the ritual that was built on fear and lies. She told them about the human who had saved the princess and then saved the world. A year later, a statue was built in the memorial gardens of. It showed a human in simple clothing standing before a doorway of darkness. The inscription read, "Daniel Tors, a human who understood that the strongest thing any being can do is to choose to give their life for others, not for honor, not for reward, but because it is right." The queen never smiled again. She ruled her people until she was very old. And everything she did to honor the memory of the human who had shown her what it meant to be truly civilized, what it meant to value life more than tradition, what it meant to sacrifice without being forced. Never forgot the man who saved her twice, once from the ritual, once by giving his life so that everyone else could live. She spent her life changing culture. She ended the practice of the ritual completely. She created new laws that protected life instead of demanding it, and she made sure that every child on learned about the human named Daniel Tors. In the deep places beneath the palace, the void beast slept, and in its dreams it remembered a gift, a freely given sacrifice, something that it had never experienced in 50,000 years, and that memory, more than any ritual, kept it at rest. Daniel Tors had been a human, a primitive being from a developing world, a person who did not matter in the eyes of the Galactic Collective. But he had shown an entire civilization what it meant to be truly evolved, what it meant to be truly advanced. Not the machines, not the technology, not the buildings that reached to the sky, but the choice to protect the weak, the choice to die for others, the choice to believe that a life, any life, was worth saving. That was what made him greater than all the civilizations that had rejected him. That was what made him eternal. In the end, the human saved not just a princess. He saved a world from the chains of its own lies. He saved a civilization from the prison it had built for itself. And he saved one creature's soul from the hunger it had been forced to endure. And in the memorial gardens under the alien stars, the statue stood, a reminder of what one human had given, a reminder of what one choice could do, a reminder that sometimes the smallest beings are the ones who change everything. The end. The queen looked at Daniel with eyes that were no longer full of hatred, they were full of desperation. "You did this," she said, "but I understand now that I did it first. 100 years ago, or 200, or whenever I chose to prioritize power over truth, you just exposed what I had already broken." She turned away and went to watch her world fall into darkness. Daniel and looked at each other. The mountain beneath their feet trembled. In the deep places, in the space where the rituals had been performed for 50,000 years, the void beast screamed. Of someone who had just lost everything, and she was going to make sure Daniel lost everything too. Stranger and Daniel, covered in dust and exhaustion from weeks in the cell, felt something shift. The trial was not about him anymore. It was about whether the way of life could be questioned. It was about whether tradition could be wrong. And Daniel Tors had no idea what would happen next.